Tonight you're drifting somewhere between history and dreamland, into a world that's both dusty with time and oddly familiar. A world where knights don't always rescue, castles aren't that glamorous, and daily life smells more like boiled onions than adventure. This isn't your teacher's history lesson. It's softer, slower, and maybe just a little snarky. So, fluff your pillow, dim the lights, and grab a cozy blanket. You're not just hearing a story tonight. You're walking through it barefoot with hay stuck to your tunic. Because tonight, we're exploring the strange rituals and quiet realities of everyday life in a medieval village. No royal courts, no epic battles. Just the kind of people who worry more about soggy bread than swords. And somehow, that makes it even more fascinating. Now close your eyes if you want. Let's begin your slow descent into the past. You wake to the sound of hooves clopping softly on wet dirt and the low grumble of a rooster that clearly doesn't understand time zones. The sky is the color of old linen, pale and stubborn, not quite ready to let go of the night. You stretch beneath a blanket that smells faintly of sheep and smoke. Your mattress is a straw-stuffed sack, uneven and loud when you shift. You don't own a pillow. Instead, there's a bundle of rags tied together like a sad, overstuffed onion. But you're used to it. Comfort isn't something you expect. Not in this century. The house around you is still, except for the soft breathing of your siblings, your aunt, and someone else you think might be your neighbor's cousin. The bed is one long bench that everyone shares, feet tangled, snoring at different tempos. Someone has drooled, possibly you. It's a mystery you'll let remain unsolved. Outside the shutters, if you can call two loose boards shutters, the village begins to exhale. A cart creaks by, pulled by a mule who is definitely over this job. A woman hums while chopping roots. A child somewhere is crying, like the world has ended, though it's probably just because they lost half a turnip. Again, you stand, carefully, because the floor is not exactly trustworthy. It's packed dirt, cracked in places, and someone's left their clogs in the exact spot your foot wants to go. You curse under your breath, quietly, respectfully. This is a holy household after all. Today's breakfast is, unsurprisingly, bread. But not the fluffy golden kind that appears in movies. Yours is dark, hard, and could be used as a defensive weapon if necessary. You crack it open and eat slowly, letting your jaw do the heavy lifting. It's chewy, sour, and tastes faintly of the sack it was stored in. But it fills the space in your stomach, and that's all you ask. You head outside, blinking into the daylight like it's something sharp. The air smells of smoke, dung, and a hint of rain. A few hens are pecking at your doorstep, judging you. You step over them like a celebrity avoiding paparazzi and make your way toward the well. This is the center of your world. Not the church, not the market, not even the manor house perched at the top of the hill like a smug toad. It's the well. Everything starts and ends here. The gossip, the errands, the secret smiles between people who aren't supposed to be smiling. You nod at the baker's daughter who is carrying a bucket bigger than her torso. She nods back with the solemn dignity of a queen who probably hasn't bathed in a week. Your chore list today is short, but only in theory. Fix the fence sounds like a sentence. It's actually a 4-hour saga involving crooked nails, a stubborn goat, and your cousin who thinks supervision is a form of contribution. Still, you manage. You always do. Even when the wind picks up and your shirt starts acting like a sail. Even when the goat escapes again. In the afternoon, you're allowed a moment of quiet. You sit by the barley field, under a sky that has finally decided to look impressive. Wide and blue, with clouds like sheep who've found a good patch of heaven. You lie back, arms behind your head, and watch the way the sun curls around the tips of the thatched roofs. It's almost beautiful. Almost. You think about dinner, and whether the stew will include actual meat this time or just the memory of it. Last time it was mostly turnips and that one suspicious carrot. But there was warmth and company and laughter muffled by chewing. That counts for something. Evening creeps in like a shy guest. The shadows grow long and lazy. Smoke rises from every chimney in synchronized spirals. Someone plays a flute badly. A dog barks, then immediately regrets it. You head home. Your hands are blistered, your knees are dirty, and you smell like you've been politely wrestling livestock. But it's fine. This is normal. No one smells like roses, not even the priest. Inside, your family is gathered around the fire. It's a small fire, more smoke than flame, but it throws enough warmth to gather around. Your uncle is telling a story that's probably only half true, and your younger brother is pretending not to pick his nose. You eat stew that's mostly cabbage and root vegetables, nodding along as your aunt prays louder than necessary. You say amen with your mouth full. Later, after a few yawns and an aggressive elbow to the ribs from someone trying to make space, you lay back down on the same lumpy mattress. The room is quiet again except for the fire popping and a soft snore that might belong to the neighbor's cousin, or your uncle, or the goat. You're too tired to care. Your eyes close slowly. The last thing you hear is your name whispered by the wind or your mother or your imagination. Either way, it's enough. You're home, in a place that's rough and strange and full of noise, but somehow, it wraps around you like a story you're living, one sleepy moment at a time. The morning starts earlier than your body prefers, but the sky doesn't care about your comfort. You wake to the scratchy thump of something alive brushing against the door. Maybe it's the neighbor's sheep. Maybe it's a confused duck. You don't question it. You're too busy trying to coax life back into your legs, which have fallen asleep from being curled at an unnatural angle under your sister's surprisingly sharp elbow. The fire's gone out, the coals barely warm, and the single candle stub from last night looks like it gave up halfway through its job. You rub your eyes and immediately regret it. You forgot that your hands still carry yesterday's dirt, and now your face is slightly more rustic. Outside, the sun rises with more enthusiasm than necessary, casting a yellow-orange glow across the thatched rooftops and illuminating the endless tasks awaiting you. You step outside and inhale deeply. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth, smoldering wood, and the faint tang of someone's breakfast going slightly wrong. The pig pen has already come alive, grunting and squealing in a morning chorus no one asked for. A few chickens wander confidently into the road like they pay taxes. You nod politely and let them pass. Today you're headed to the far edge of the village where the woods lean in close like they're eavesdropping. You've been asked, told, to help gather firewood, which in theory sounds peaceful. In practice, it involves lugging a basket the size of your torso and navigating brambles that seem personally offended by your presence. The path winds gently past small garden plots and the occasional leaning fence. The houses thin out until you're walking through open space where the air feels different, quieter, older, like it remembers things you've never been told. You find yourself near the home of old Mari, the healer who may or may not have once turned someone's wart into a mouse. No one's brave enough to ask. Her garden spills over with plants that look like they know secrets. She doesn't speak much, but when she does, her voice sounds like it's made of gravel and time. You nod as you pass, and she gives a slight nod back, as if acknowledging that yes, it's a good day to be mildly suspicious of everything. In the woods, the trees press in close. You hear birdsong, but it's distant, filtered through layers of bark and mist. Your boots sink slightly into the mossy ground, and your fingers go numb every time you reach down for a particularly damp branch. Still, there's something soothing about it. The rhythm of collecting, the weight of the basket pulling at your shoulder, the smell of earth and sap and cold morning air. You work steadily, occasionally pausing to stretch your back and wonder how anyone ever thought this was a relaxing job. By midday, you've filled the basket, your hands are scratched, and you've come to terms with the fact that one of your socks is now mostly mud. You begin the walk back slower this time, dragging your feet just enough to kick pebbles and feel the earth respond. You spot a squirrel darting up a tree with the urgency of someone late to an acorn conference. For a moment, you smile. Not because anything's particularly funny, just because it's quiet and your thoughts have settled into a pleasant hum. Back in the village, people move like clockwork, though no one owns a clock. The blacksmith's apprentice is pounding metal with dramatic flair, the brewer is already tipsy and singing loudly about fish, and the miller's cart is stuck in the same rut it's been stuck in for 3 seasons. You pass the baker's cottage and catch a whiff of something sweet. an actual miracle in this century. You glance inside just in time to see the baker's youngest child drop an entire tray of what might have been tarts. No one screams. They just sigh. That's how it is here. Drama happens but quietly. You drop the wood at the communal pile near the center of the village, give your arms a grateful shake, and head toward the stream to wash up. The water is freezing, because of course it is, and the soap you're using is more lard than lavender. But it gets the job done. Mostly. You scrub your hands, splash your face, and manage to soak the hem of your tunic, because balance was never your strong suit. Once you're mostly dry and only slightly shivering, you walk to the square. It's not a square in any mathematical sense, more of a lumpy intersection where people tend to gather. A few merchants have set up makeshift stalls, offering everything from wilted onions to suspiciously damp fabric. You eye a small jar of honey, then look at your coin pouch, which jingles with the weight of exactly 3 small copper pieces and a button. The honey remains a dream. Still, you chat with the old man selling radishes, mostly because he tells good stories and smells like smoked sausage. He's talking about the time the village almost flooded, which sounds dramatic until you realize flood meant one particularly determined rainstorm and a chicken that refused to evacuate. But you listen anyway. His voice is slow, gravelly, the kind that wraps around you like a worn quilt. Eventually, you head home. Your path takes you past the chapel, where the priest is trying to hang a new banner and clearly losing the argument with gravity. You offer help, and he declines with a sigh, muttering something about divine punishment for poorly tied knots. You nod solemnly, as if you understand theological fabric strategy, and move on. Dinner tonight is better than expected. Someone found leaks. The stew is thick, hot, and almost comforting, except for the occasional crunch that might be dirt or might be spice. Who can tell anymore? You eat in silence, surrounded by the gentle clatter of spoons and the low hum of shared exhaustion. As the sky turns dark and the stars begin their slow blink into visibility, you step outside one last time. The village is softer now, shadows stretching long, the lanterns glowing like lazy fireflies. You walk slowly, letting your feet trace familiar paths. Past the barn with the squeaky door, past the well, now silent. Past the field where something rustles, probably a fox, possibly your imagination. You stop near the tree at the edge of the village, the one that bends just enough to look like it's listening. You lean against it, look up, and let the cool night wrap around your shoulders like a friend. You breathe in, then out. No rush. There never is. You return home and crawl into your corner of the mattress maze. Someone's already snoring. Someone else is muttering in their sleep. You find your spot, fold your hands over your stomach, and stare at the ceiling beams, tracing cracks you've memorized 100 times. The fire's down to a whisper. The room smells like wool and ash and cabbage. You close your eyes, and the last thing you feel is the quiet weight of another day, lived fully, even if slowly, even if simply. You've made it. Another ordinary, extraordinary day in the medieval world, a place that demands so much but offers moments of stillness in return. The next morning, before your eyelids have fully surrendered to the idea of waking up, you hear the knock. It's not a sharp, intentional knock, more like someone hesitating then changing their mind halfway through. 3 gentle thumps on the wooden frame, not loud enough to be urgent, but just persistent enough to make you sigh and shift under the blanket. You whisper a groan that only the ceiling beams can hear and sit up slowly, careful not to elbow the person still drooling on your shoulder. Your legs ache from yesterday's chores, and your hair has formed an alliance with gravity and straw. You push yourself upright, throw on a tunic that smells like the corner it was balled up in, and shuffle toward the door. Outside, the morning mist hangs low and stubborn, curling around the huts like it has nowhere better to be. You unlatch the wooden bar and pull open the door just enough to see a figure standing there. He's young, maybe 16, maybe 23. Hard to tell under the layer of road dust and uncertainty. He's got the look of someone who's walked a very long way without being quite sure why. His shoes are worn through. His cloak is more holes than fabric. and his eyes keep darting between your face and the sky like one of you might give him permission to exist. He says his name is Emmerich, though you're not sure that's true. He says he's looking for work, shelter, or bread, in that order, but he'd accept any of the three. You blink slowly, still waiting for your brain to finish its boot-up sequence. Then you step aside and gesture toward the fire, which is more ash than flame but still offers the suggestion of warmth. He steps in like he's afraid the invitation might be a trick, and sits near the hearth with the kind of relief that makes you think he's been turned away more than once this week. You fetch him some of last night's bread, which is mostly crust now, but he eats it like it's a feast. You don't ask too many questions. That's not the way here. People arrive. People leave. Some are running from things. Some are running toward them. Most aren't even sure which. The village doesn't take long to notice him. By mid-morning, half the children have created elaborate theories about where he came from. A few think he's a lost prince in disguise. One is convinced he's a sorcerer because he talks quietly and doesn't blink often. The butcher's wife thinks he might be a tax collector, which is ridiculous because he clearly hasn't seen clean water in several moons. But speculation is the village's favorite pastime, and today it has a brand new puzzle. You take him to the field, show him how to patch the fence, how to avoid the one goat that bites ankles on sight. He works silently, competently. He sweats without complaint, and only winces once when he steps on a buried rock shaped like a particularly vindictive turnip. You don't ask why he's really here. Instead, you teach him how to strip bark for cord, where the stream runs clearest, and which patch of the wall leaks during heavy rain. He listens, more than most people do. That alone earns him points. That night, your house feels different. Not worse, not better, just wider. He curls near the wall, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, and sleeps like someone who hasn't done so safely in a long time. You wonder if he'll stay. You wonder if he should. But mostly you're just glad the air is quiet and the fire doesn't need tending again until morning. The next few days fall into a rhythm. You and Emmerich work side by side, neither of you saying much unless necessary. He's strong with the kind of calm that doesn't ask for attention. He fixes the barn roof without being asked. He helps carry water before the sun's up. He returns a borrowed spade to the blacksmith, and somehow it comes back cleaner than it left. Slowly the village softens. Old Mari offers him dried herbs for his cough. The miller grunts something that might have been approval. Even the biting goat seems less bitey. You start to enjoy his presence, even if you don't understand it. There's something steady about him, like a rock in a fast-moving stream. He doesn't flinch at hard work. He doesn't fluster when the baker's daughter teases him. He simply exists in a way that doesn't ask anything of anyone. And in a world where everyone is always needing or asking or taking, that's its own kind of magic. One afternoon, as the wind carries the first hint of cold that promises an early frost, you find him sitting under the old beech tree near the field. He's holding something in his hands, a small carved piece of wood shaped like a fox. It's rough, imperfect, but carefully made. You sit beside him, legs stretched out, arms folded behind your head, and wait. Eventually, he speaks. Not much, just a name. His brother. Gone now. The fox was his favorite animal. Emmerich carves one every time he stays in a new place, leaves it behind when he moves on. A trail of memory, carved in wood, hidden in the cracks of the world. You don't say anything. You don't need to. Instead, you take a piece of bark from the ground and start carving beside him. Yours looks more like a potato with ears, but it doesn't matter. The silence between you is full, not empty. That night, he doesn't sleep on the floor. You've made space in the bed between your cousin and the neighbor's cousin who may or may not still live here. He hesitates, then climbs in, stiff as a fence post. But by morning, his arm is flopped over someone's chest and he's snoring like he was born in this house. The next few days pass like smoke. Slowly, then all at once. You laugh more. Your chores feel lighter. The evenings stretch a little longer before sleep pulls you under. Emmerich becomes part of the rhythm, like a stone added to the wheel that still turns just fine. And then one morning, you wake to find his blanket folded neatly on the stool, his spot by the fire cold. No note. No goodbye. Just the carved fox sitting near your bowl, its tiny wooden ears tilted as if listening. You stare at it for a long time. Then you pick it up and slide it into the pouch at your belt, next to your 3 copper coins and the button. You don't tell anyone he's gone. You don't need to. The village notices everything eventually. Life moves forward. It always does. The fence needs mending again. The goat is back to biting. The sky threatens rain and follows through. But in small, quiet ways, something has shifted. A rhythm has changed just slightly. And you're still here. Still walking the same paths. Still watching the stars from the edge of the barley field, wondering where Emmerich went, and whether he left another fox behind in some other quiet village under some other pale sky. But for now, the night wraps around you again. The fire whispers. The wind hums a tune only the trees know. You close your eyes, your hand resting lightly over the pouch, and you drift, not away from the world, but deeper into it. It's the kind of morning that smells like possibility and damp hay, and you know exactly what that means. Market day. The village only gets one every 7 or 8 sunrises, depending on the weather, the mood of the pigs, and whether the bridge to the next town still exists. You stretch under the blanket, which has somehow twisted itself around your legs like a reluctant python, and sit up slowly. Someone is already poking the fire. Someone else is loudly regretting last night's cider. You yawn, scratch your shoulder, and step into your boots with the elegance of a half-awake donkey. Outside, the light is gray and flat, the air full of breath and baked clay, and the sounds of the village waking with more energy than anyone has earned yet. Your job this morning isn't glamorous. You're carting bundles of dried herbs to the stalls, the kind that smell a little strange but cure everything from headaches to heartbreak depending on who you ask and how desperate they are. The bundle on your back is heavy, slapping against your spine with every step. Your knees ache. Your tunic is too short on one side again. But the path is familiar, lined with ruts and moss and stones shaped like faces. You hum softly as you walk. Something tuneless. Something yours. By the time you reach the market square, which again is only a square if you're being generous, it's already humming. There's a woman selling woven baskets stacked higher than she is tall. A man yelling far too passionately about onions. A small child trying to convince passers-by that his rock is actually a magic talisman. Someone is roasting chestnuts, or maybe burning something that used to be food. The smell is somewhere between nostalgic and alarming. You drop your herbs at the apothecary's table and begin the slow circuit, weaving through smells, voices, and elbows. A traveling musician is playing a fiddle near the well, though playing might be a kind description. The instrument screams like it's being tickled by accident. Still, people toss him coins, some for the music, some perhaps to make it stop. A pair of sisters sell eggs from a basket that appears bottomless. A quiet man in a long coat is selling ink in tiny glass bottles, claiming it's made with ash and river water and poetry. You consider buying one until you realize you haven't written anything in years that wasn't someone's name on a storage barrel. Still, it's nice to think about. You pass by the cloth merchant and stop to run your fingers across a bolt of blue-dyed linen, the kind that's never touched a peasant's skin without a wedding or a bribe involved. The texture is soft, smooth like the surface of a quiet pond. You can't afford it, of course, not even close. But the merchant lets you feel it anyway, with the resigned air of someone who knows how to spot a dreamer when they see one. You thank her with a nod, then step aside for someone with actual coin. In the center of it all, a tanner is shouting about leather goods, belts, satchels, even a pair of shoes that look like they'd last 2 winters if you never walked. You stare at them, calculate the coins in your pouch, and decide to keep walking. Instead, you treat yourself to a warm hand pie filled with mystery meat and even more mysterious spices. You take a bite and instantly regret it, but it's food and it's hot, and that's enough for today. Near the edge of the market, a boy juggles stones with wild eyes and a wide grin, attracting a small crowd. You lean against a post and watch as he drops one, catches another behind his back, and bows like a lord. The children laugh and someone claps. For a moment, no one is selling, buying, or worrying about roofs or frost. Everyone is just watching a boy do something slightly impressive with slightly round rocks. After a while, you help the apothecary rearrange her jars. She pays you with a pot of salve and a roll of sweetened oat bread. You sit near her stall and eat slowly, watching the way the shadows shift as the sun moves overhead. The cobbler's son walks by with a cart of broken boots. The weaver's dog chases a goose in increasingly absurd circles. A cloud passes, and everyone collectively looks up as if trying to remember what the sky is supposed to do next. The market starts to slow in the afternoon, the energy thinning like soup at the bottom of the pot. Some stalls pack up early, others linger, hoping for one last sale. You help lift a crate, sweep stray straw into a pile, and laugh when a goat eats half of it while you're not looking. Someone offers you a sip of spiced wine from a tin cup. You accept, taste, and cough immediately. It burns all the way down, like fire flavored with nutmeg and regret. As evening approaches, the square clears out. Wagons creak toward the edge of town. The wind picks up, tugging scarves and caps like a child demanding attention. You carry the last of the herb bundles home, your feet dragging, your shoulders drooping. But there's something in your chest that feels full, not in a loud, dramatic way, just quietly satisfied, like the feeling after a good book or a clean blanket. Back home, the fire's already going. Your aunt is slicing onions with the speed of someone who's done it 10,000 times. The stew pot sings softly on the hook. You hand over the salve and the oat bread and get a wink in return. The smell of dinner wraps around you like a thick cloak, rich and warm and vaguely suspicious. You don't ask what's in it. No one ever does. You eat with your family the way you always do. Crowded, loud, overlapping stories and spoons. Your cousin retells the story of the goose chase with more heroism than accuracy. Someone's elbow ends up in someone else's bowl. You all laugh anyway. After dinner, you sneak outside with the last of your bread and sit on the step, watching the stars climb their slow ladder into the sky. One by one, they flicker into place, quiet candles lighting a ceiling older than time. You nibble the edge of the bread, thinking about the ink bottles, the fiddle song, the shoes you couldn't afford, and the boy with the juggling stones. You wonder where they'll all be tomorrow. You wonder where you'll be in a year. But then a cold breeze curls around your ankle, and you decide those thoughts can wait. For now, there's warmth in your belly, stories in your ears, and bread in your hand. That's more than enough. You finish the last bite, brush crumbs from your lap, and head inside. The house is dark except for the firelight, and everyone's already begun to settle. You find your spot, shift the blanket, and nestle in, eyes already half closed. Your muscles hum with that quiet end-of-day tired. Not exhaustion, not ache. Just the soft buzz of having lived. And just before you drift, you think of the blue linen and the idea of writing again. Not letters, not lists, but something just for yourself. Maybe you'll try tomorrow. Or maybe you'll just watch the clouds and eat another hand pie. Both sound like good endings. Morning comes slower this time, wrapped in fog and the quiet drip of rain from thatch to mud. You wake not to a sound, but to the weight of silence. The kind that presses gently on the chest and makes you pause before rising, as if the day itself is unsure whether it wants to begin. You stretch beneath the rough wool blanket, your muscles reluctant but obedient. The air smells like damp stone and cooling ashes, and somewhere in the stillness you hear the steady patter of rain on the roof, a rhythm soft enough to keep secrets. Today is the day of your visit to the Abbey. Not for penance, though you could probably use some. Not for prayer, though that's expected. But for a delivery. You've been asked to bring a sack of barley and a small package of beeswax candles, gifted from the village in exchange for healing salves, blessings, and the occasional strongly worded warning about sinning too loudly after sundown. You dress slowly, layering wool against the creeping chill, and step into boots that squish faintly, already soaked through from yesterday's puddles. You pull your cloak tighter, grab the parcel, and begin your walk up the hill. The abbey sits just beyond the edge of the village, half hidden by a ring of old trees that seem to lean protectively inward. Their trunks are gnarled, twisted like they've been listening too closely for too many centuries. The path winds through mud and roots, occasionally opening to patches of worn stone where feet have passed for generations. As you walk, the air grows quieter. Not silent exactly, but heavy, like the world is holding its breath. You arrive at the wooden gates, soaked at the hem and a little out of breath, and knock 3 times. The sound echoes in a way that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Eventually, a figure in a gray habit opens the door just enough to peer out. She's older, but sharp-eyed, with the posture of someone who's carried too many burdens but refuses to drop even one. She nods once, steps aside, and lets you in without a word. The abbey smells like stone and beeswax and something faintly herbal. Lavender, maybe, or mint dulled by time. The halls are dim, lit by slits of cloudy light and the occasional candle flickering against old mortar. You walk carefully, trying not to let your boots slap against the floor. The silence here is different. Not just quiet, but curated. Built layer by layer through prayer, routine, and an impressive amount of not speaking. You nod to passing sisters who acknowledge you with the same brief, unreadable expressions, polite, calm, and deeply suspicious of outsiders who breathe too loudly. You're led to a small storeroom where you unload the barley and candles, stacking them beside shelves lined with clay pots and bundles of herbs hung upside down to dry. The sister overseeing you thanks you with a voice like soft wool, rough, but warm. She offers you a piece of honey bread, and you accept it with both hands, as is custom here. It's denser than village bread, sweeter too, and leaves your fingers sticky with comfort. When your task is done, she asks if you'd like to sit in on the midday prayer. You hesitate. Not because you're unwilling, but because you've heard the chants echo through the hills, low and haunting, like water over stones. You nod. She leads you into the chapel, a small arched space carved from stone so old it remembers a time before your grandparents were born. The ceiling curves above you like a protective shell, and the light filtering in from the high window is the color of quiet. The sisters file in, taking their places in worn wooden stalls. No one speaks. No one needs to. When the chant begins, it's not singing. It's breathing with tone. It's words stretched into feeling. You sit in the back, hands folded awkwardly, unsure of the rituals but unwilling to disturb them. The sound wraps around you. Not loud, not sharp, just endless. Gentle. Monotone. A rhythm that belongs to no one voice but belongs to all of them together. And somehow, without meaning to, your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. Your eyes soften. It's not the words. It's the weightlessness. After the final note fades into stone and silence returns like an old friend, you bow your head, not quite sure why, and rise to leave. On your way out, you pass a small garden enclosed within the abbey walls. An herb patch, a few apple trees, a bench worn smooth by time and prayer. You pause there, letting the rain mist your face. The air smells of rosemary and wet earth. You think of Emmerich, of his quiet gaze and his carved fox. You wonder if he's ever been here. You wonder if he would have sat on this bench or just passed through ghost-like. You return to the village slowly. The clouds hang low, pressing close, and your boots squish with each step. But you don't mind. You carry the sound of the chants with you, tucked behind your ears. The hills seem less steep, the trees less heavy. The silence now feels less like an absence and more like a promise that everything is still happening, even when it's quiet. Back home, the fire is reluctant but willing. You add kindling, coax it gently, and warm your fingers against the first licking flames. Dinner is cabbage again, and your uncle claims he once traded with a man who claimed he met a king, which somehow ends with someone nearly choking from laughter and your aunt throwing a damp rag at him. The room is full of the clatter of spoons, the creak of the old table, and the warmth of familiar sounds. Later, when the house settles, you sit alone near the doorway, watching the mist move like a ghost across the ground. You pull the honey bread from your satchel, saved half for now, and eat it slowly, savoring each bite as if it's a rare treasure. And maybe it is. Not because of the taste, but because of the day behind it. The silence, the stone, the echoing chant. The feeling that, For a moment, time had slowed just enough for you to step outside of it. You curl under the blanket with rain still ticking against the shutters. Someone sighs beside you. Someone else turns over in their sleep. The fire breathes low and even. You close your eyes. The memory of the Abbey garden still vivid in your chest. Rosemary. Silence. Honey. The sound of breath becoming prayer. And you drift, not away, but deeper in. As if the quiet itself has arms, and it's holding you now. The sun rises behind a veil of silver clouds, too soft to cast shadows, too gentle to fully wake the world. You rise slowly, not because you're tired, though you are, but because some mornings deserve to be handled like fragile glass. You sit at the edge of the bed, listening to the soft symphony of a sleeping household. Someone snoring gently, someone mumbling in their dreams, the faint drip of water from the leaky corner by the door. Your toes touch the floor, and it's colder than expected. You curl them briefly, then stand. The fire has gone out again, but the coals are still warm, pulsing like the last sigh of a song. Outside, the village feels paused, as if the day is deciding whether it wants to begin. The air smells of ash and dew. You cross the square slowly, your boots whispering against the mud, and you almost don't notice the smoke curling upward from a patch of trees beyond the eastern field. Too far to be a cottage, too contained to be a bonfire. You pause, you squint, and you remember, today the wanderer comes. She's not a local, never has been. She arrives twice a year, always in spring and just before winter. No one knows her name, though some call her the red-braided woman, others just the listener. Her cart is covered in patchwork fabric that might once have been silk and is pulled by a mule so old it might have seen the first sunrise. She sets up outside the village by the wild trees where the hawthorn grows too thick and the soil remembers older things. And she waits, not calling out, not advertising, just waits beside her fire, her eyes like ink dropped into water. You walk there without thinking. Your legs remember the way. The wind picks up slightly, tugging your cloak like a playful hand. When you reach her camp, the fire is already crackling, not bright but alive, dancing over logs that look half burnt and half blooming. She's seated on a low stool, weaving a string of dried apple slices into a loop. Her fingers are stained with something dark, berries perhaps, or secrets. She doesn't look up when you arrive, but her lips curve into a smile that says she already knew you'd come. You sit across from her on a blanket that smells faintly of smoke and thyme. She offers you a cup of something warm. It smells like cinnamon, but the taste is strange. Earthy, sweet, and just a little bitter, like memories you haven't looked at in a while. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't need to. The fire does the talking, and today it crackles with the confidence of something ancient. After a while, she opens a pouch and pulls out a handful of small bones, carved, painted, marked with symbols that don't match anything from the chapel. She tosses them onto a cloth and studies them in silence. Her brow furrows. She makes a sound low in her throat. Not concern exactly, but acknowledgement. Then she looks at you, really looks, and speaks without asking permission. "You're carrying something you haven't named," she says, and her voice is both softer and sharper than you expect. Something old, not a grief, not a fear, a question. She pauses. It's been following you. You don't respond. You don't know how. Instead, you stare at the fire, watching the way the flames lean toward her when she speaks, like they're listening too. She tells you stories, not yours, but ones that somehow still fit. A fisherman who dreamed of trees, a mother who whispered to ghosts, a boy who carved wings from ice. Each story unfurls like a ribbon, colored with strangeness and truth. You lose track of time. You lose track of your own name. All that matters is the fire, the steam rising from your cup, and the way her voice slips between your ribs without asking. Eventually, she stands. You expect her to offer you a charm or a warning. or some riddled bit of advice you'll pretend not to remember later. Instead, she hands you a small stone, smooth, oval, warm. For your pocket, she says. Not because it will protect you, but because it will remind you that you don't need protection all the time. You nod, unable to form a proper thank you. She's already returned to her stool, her back turned, her fingers working again at the apple thread. You understand the conversation is over. You leave the way you came, the stone heavy in your palm, though it's barely the size of a walnut. Back in the village, the square has begun to stir. Someone is hauling a crate of carrots. Someone else is trying to fix a wheel with what appears to be a spoon. Life continues, unbothered by mystics or meanings. You tuck the stone into your pouch between the fox and the button, and don't tell anyone where you were. They wouldn't laugh, but they wouldn't understand either. Not really. The day unfolds gently after that. You help repair the roof of the storage shed, balancing awkwardly on beams that creak with every step. You trade 2 hours of work for a bowl of lentils and a slice of turnip pie, which tastes better than it sounds. You carry water from the well, watch the chickens peck at things only they find interesting, and listen to your cousin recite a love poem he definitely did not write himself. Everything feels normal. But underneath it, something hums. A thread pulled just slightly tighter. At dusk, you walk to the edge of the woods. Her fire is still burning. You can see the glow through the branches. But you don't approach. Not tonight. Tonight, it's enough to know she's there. You sit in the grass, knees pulled to your chest, watching the sky shift from blue to bruised plum. The stars blink awake, cautious at first, then bold. You feel the stone in your pocket, warm still, or maybe just warm from your hand. You hold it for a moment, then let it go. Back home, the house is full of soup steam and candlelight. Someone has patched the window with waxed cloth. It holds. For now, you eat quietly, listening to the rise and fall of evening talk. Chores done, things found, stories traded. You say little. Your thoughts are elsewhere, drifting among apple slices, smoke, and fire-lit words you can't quite forget. When it's time for sleep, you find your usual corner, nestle into the folds of blankets and limbs, and stare up at the ceiling. The beams look different tonight. Not changed, just seen. You blink slowly. Once, twice. Your breath evens out. Your body begins to melt into the mattress. And just as sleep begins to take you, you hear a soft crackle, a memory of fire, a whisper from the woods, a voice that says, not in words, but in warmth. The question you carry doesn't need an answer, only a name. And in the dark, you let it go. The wind begins before the rain. You hear it around midnight, slipping under the shutters, dragging dry leaves across the thatch like tiny feet running in reverse. You stir beneath the blankets but don't open your eyes. You know that sound. It's not just wind, it's a message. One whispered in gusts and swirls, saying something is on its way. You pull the covers tighter around your shoulders, trying to ignore the creeping draft that has somehow found the exact hole in your bedding every time. Somewhere near your feet, someone coughs softly. Someone else shifts, mutters something that doesn't make sense, and goes quiet again. Outside, the wind grows louder, angrier, gathering in the eaves like a beast testing the walls of its cage. You wake to the smell of wet. The kind of wet that seeps into everything. Soil, stone, skin. Rain has arrived, heavy and relentless, pounding on the roof with rhythmic insistence. You sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and glance around the room. Everyone's awake, even if they pretend not to be. Your cousin is already at the door, inspecting the edge of the floor where last year's storm found a way in. The edge still stains dark whenever water remembers the path. The pot is moved beneath it without anyone saying a word. The clink of dripping begins, a familiar, almost comforting sound like a clock no one winds. There's no breakfast this morning, not in the usual sense. Just yesterday's bread, still tough, chewed slowly while you watch the shadows dance across the floor. The fire is struggling. It hisses when touched with damp wood, flares briefly, then sulks back into embers. You tend it with the kind of focus usually reserved for threading needles or avoiding the priest's gaze during sermons. Eventually, it steadies, though it never quite glows. The room warms, if only a little. You spend the morning sealing shutters, checking the thatch, pushing stray logs closer to the hearth. Outside, the village is half submerged in gray. The paths are rivers, the animals sullen and quiet, their usual noises replaced with heavy breathing and the squelch of hooves in mud. You cross the square under your hood, shoulders hunched against the wind, and see the blacksmith struggling to tie down a tarp. You help him, your fingers going numb as the rope slips and fights back. He grunts his thanks and nods toward the stream, now swollen and mean, creeping over the edge like it wants to eat its way into the fields. You check the fences. Most hold. One doesn't. It's the north edge, near the corner where the land dips unexpectedly, a detail you forgot to mention during last week's repairs. The water has found it now, rushing through the gap like it's been waiting. You haul a plank into place, jam a rock against it, and whisper a prayer. Not because you expect it to work, but because your mother always said prayers sounded best in the rain. By midday, your cloak is soaked through. You return home, dump your boots by the fire, and wring out your sleeves while your aunt places bowls of hot water on the table. Not for drinking, but for hands, for steam, for pretending your bones don't ache. You sit close, letting the mist rise into your face, and close your eyes. It smells like rosemary and something sweet, a peel of apple perhaps, or the memory of cider. The others talk softly, voices lowered out of respect for the storm, as if being too loud might draw its attention. In the afternoon, the sky darkens unnaturally early. Lamps are lit. Extra blankets are brought down from the loft. Someone tells a story about the Great Flood of '38, which you know wasn't all that great, unless you count the part where the parson floated into the square in a half-barrel and declared it a miracle. Still, the story gets a few laughs, a few wide-eyed glances at the ceiling, and the sharp creak of old beams above. You spend time mending things. Your belt, a frayed edge of your satchel, a tear in your sleeve where the goat took offense to your existence again. The stitches are uneven, but they hold. You've never been good at precision, but you're good at fixing what breaks. That counts for something. The thread pulls tight, and with each knot your mind settles further, anchored by the rhythm of small repairs. Later, just before dusk, though you wouldn't know it by the light, there's a knock at the door. Sharp, deliberate, not like Emmerich's, and not like the hesitant tap of a child looking for honey. It's the village watchman, soaked to the bone, asking for help. The stream has broken its banks further south. One of the bridges is gone. A family is stranded at the edge of the wood, their animals scattered, their house half flooded. You don't hesitate. You grab your cloak, your boots, and a rope. Someone hands you a lantern. The fire is too low to object. The path is nearly gone, swallowed by water and mud. You tread carefully, boots sliding, lantern swinging. The wind has quieted, but the rain falls steady, vertical now, heavy as stones. When you reach the house, it's worse than described. The door has been pushed off its hinges. The chickens are roosting on the table. A child stands barefoot in a puddle, holding a dripping doll like it might save them all. You gather them quickly. The mother, 2 children, an old man with a cough and no coat. The livestock can't be saved. Not now. Not tonight. The rope is tied between you and the mother. You lead the way back, step by slow step, eyes never leaving the lantern light ahead. By the time you return, the fire has been fed, beds have been cleared, and bowls of broth are waiting. You say little. You don't need to. The heat from the hearth is louder than any thanks, and the look from the old man, part disbelief, part gratitude, is more than enough. That night, the storm lingers. It scratches at the shutters, howls around the eaves, and weeps down the stone chimney like a sorrow too old to name. You sit by the fire, wrapped in a blanket that doesn't quite reach your feet, and stare into the flames. Someone has started humming, a low tune, aimless but soothing. You don't know the melody. You hum along anyway. Later, when the blankets are shared and the room is full of breath and warmth and the distant drip of the pot by the door, you lie back and close your eyes. Your legs are sore. Your hands still smell of rope and river. But there's a quiet inside you now, not the silence of absence, but the stillness of something earned. The storm rages outside, unbothered by prayers or patched roofs. But inside you sleep knowing the walls hold, the fire burns, and the morning will come when it's ready. And in that small certainty, you let go. The morning after the storm feels like waking inside a breath that's been held too long. The rain is gone, but its memory lingers everywhere, pooled in footprints dripping from thatch, soaked deep into the walls and the weary bones of the village. You rise slowly, your limbs stiff from yesterday's work, and feel a quiet ache behind your eyes that could be sleep, or sorrow, or the soft consequence of doing something brave, and not knowing what to do with the aftermath. You sit for a moment on the edge of your shared bed, blinking into the haze. Someone has placed a warm cup of water near the fire. You drink it without question. It tastes faintly of ash and gratitude. Outside, the sky is clearing. Blue peeks through gray in cautious patches like the sky is embarrassed to show its face after yesterday's tantrum. The village is already awake, buzzing in low tones, a kind of cautious optimism drifting through the air. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders, still damp at the edges, and step outside. The ground squelches beneath your boots, the mud thick and stubborn, but the wind is light and smells of fresh pine and clean beginnings. Today was supposed to be the festival, a midsummer celebration, not of harvest or saints, but of something older. A pause in the year, a day where work stopped and stories took center stage. There was to be music and fire, painted faces and honeyed cakes, dancing around the stone circle at the edge of the wheat field. Children had spent the week practicing songs, and your neighbor's youngest had insisted on collecting every feather in sight to decorate her hair. But the storm has rewritten everything. The stage of grass is flooded. The firewood is too wet. The cakes were never baked. And the stone circle is now half swallowed by a stream that wasn't there before. Still, some try to reclaim the day. You help string wet garlands across the square, the flowers drooping but defiant. The butcher's apprentice, who claims no one's ever seen him smile, carves a flute from a branch and plays a tune so clumsy it circles back around to charming. Someone pulls out a ribbon, red and frayed, and begins spinning slowly in the mud, arms out, laughter rising like steam from a hot cup. A few others join in, not because it's beautiful, but because sometimes joy must be insisted upon. You find yourself smiling, not because anything's particularly funny, but because something in the air has shifted, not forgotten the storm, not ignored the damage, but decided to dance anyway. You sit near the well, carving a piece of wood you found floating in the aftermath, letting your fingers work without thought. It starts to look like a bird, or maybe a flame. It doesn't matter. It's something new made from something lost. That feels enough like magic. Later, the priest passes by. He does not dance. He does not carve. But he places a basket of apples in the center of the square, and that alone feels like a miracle. You take one, bite into it, and let the juice trickle down your chin like you're too young to know better. It's sweet, sharp, and alive. The best kind of fruit. The kind that feels like a second chance. As the sun begins to settle behind the hills, a few villagers carry torches to the edge of the field, where the circle of stones waits, soggy but patient. The ritual fire is too ambitious an idea tonight, but someone lights a small candle in the center. Just one. Protected by a curve of old pottery and a ring of damp moss. You kneel beside it, hands folded without knowing why, and whisper a name. Yours. Just to hear it inside this moment. Just to remind yourself you're still here. Still you. Still part of this place. The others follow one by one. A quiet procession of mud-streaked feet and hopeful breath. No one speaks loudly. No one sings. But a kind of music still rises. Boots dragging in grass, whispers of thanks, the occasional muffled giggle when someone steps in something they shouldn't. You sit on a flat stone and listen to it all. This small hymn of persistence. A festival without feathers or fire, and yet still whole in its own strange way. When the candle finally flickers out, not because of wind, but simply because all things end. The crowd begins to wander back toward home. You stay behind for a moment, watching the smoke curl upward like a thread being sewn into the darkening sky. You close your eyes, place your hands on the wet stone beneath you, and let the quiet hold you steady. Back at the house, the floor is already strewn with boots and cloaks and laughter. Someone has roasted onions and found a scrap of cheese too important to hoard. The stew is thinner than usual, but spiced with something daring. Maybe rosemary, maybe mischief. You eat slowly, your stomach more full than you expected, your heart heavier and lighter all at once. The children reenact the dancing in exaggerated motions, knocking over a stool and sending everyone into breathless laughter. Your cousin claims he could have lit a fire even with wet wood had he been given the chance. Your aunt reminds him of the last time he tried, and how the barn still smells of shame. Someone begins humming a tune. Not quite the song that was planned for the festival, but close enough that it counts. Later, when the fire has died down to a lazy glow and your back rests against the wall where the draft is worst, you feel a sense of completion. Not the kind that comes from achievement, but the kind that comes from having simply made it through. Through storms, through changes, through the unraveling of plans. And you think of the candle, the single flame in the rain-washed stones, and how it wasn't bright enough to guide anyone, but somehow still felt like a beacon. You drift to sleep, wrapped in warmth and the fading scent of onions and pine. Your carved bird tucked beside your bed, still unfinished but no longer needing to be complete. Outside, the stars return, shy at first, then bold, then endless. And inside, the festival lives on in whispers, in the way your toes curl toward heat, in the shared breath of those who endured, adapted, and still found ways to smile in the mud. And as your breathing slows, the last thing you hear is someone quietly saying, "Maybe next year." But you, already halfway into dreams, know the truth. Maybe this year was already enough. The next morning comes slowly, as if the sun is reluctant to return. You open your eyes to a room still draped in shadow, the air thick with the scent of old smoke and wool too long damp. The others are still curled in blankets, limbs tangled like overgrown roots in a forest bed. You lie still for a while, listening to the quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after something, not before. You breathe in. The coals in the hearth are sleeping, faintly red. Someone shifts under the covers. Someone else murmurs a name you don't recognize, and then falls silent again. You rise carefully, stepping between feet and elbows, avoiding the floorboards you know will creak, and pull on your cloak without bothering to fix the hood that always falls crooked. Outside, the world is washed clean. The puddles have calmed into mirrors reflecting crooked fences and reluctant chickens. You walk slowly through the village, boots squishing, nodding at the cat that stares at you like it owns the path. The sky is low and pale, clouded over but peaceful, like a thought that hasn't fully formed. The storm has passed, and in its wake, something soft remains. A kind of hush. Not fear, not grief. Just a pause. You wander without a plan. Past the well. Past the field where the scarecrow leans like a drunken monk. Past the edge of the woods where the path to the abbey disappears into tangled green. Your feet take you toward the edge of the village where the road begins to forget it's a road and starts behaving more like a suggestion. And there, tucked between two leaning trees, is the small hut no one really talks about. The scribe's house. He's not a real scribe, not anymore. Used to be long ago in a place with taller buildings and fewer sheep. No one knows why he left, or why he writes letters that are never sent. Some say he lost someone. Others say he simply got tired of writing words that belong to other people. Now he just listens and writes and keeps the parchment in a chest made of applewood and iron. You stand outside the door for a moment. It's always slightly open, as if waiting for someone. You knock anyway because it feels polite and because he's the kind of man who would notice even a whisper against the frame. He calls for you to enter, and you do. The inside smells of ink, dust, and something faintly metallic. The scent of old paper pressed between memory and meaning. He's sitting at the table, pen in hand, not looking at you, but already halfway through a sentence. You nod, and he nods back, and for a while you simply stand there in the hush of parchment and lamplight, listening to the scratch of ink across the page. When he finishes, he sets the pen down gently, folds the sheet and places it in a small wooden box with a ribbon you know he reties every morning. Just so. He gestures for you to sit, and when you do, he offers you the same question he asks everyone who comes to him. What needs to be said? It's not the kind of question you answer quickly. You sit with it, turning it over in your mind like a smooth stone. What needs to be said? Not what's urgent, not what's dramatic, just what hasn't yet found its voice. You start to speak slowly. A story about someone you miss. Not someone dead, just someone gone. Someone who stood beside you once in a field of barley, who said nothing profound, just looked at the sky and called it good. You don't know why that memory lives in your bones like a carved mark, but it does. You talk about Emmerich and the fox, and how sometimes you wake thinking he's still beside the fire. You talk about the stone in your pouch and how it's warm, or maybe just pretending. The scribe listens without blinking, his fingers resting on the edge of a parchment that's still blank. When you finish, he begins writing. Slowly, without rush. The words come like water from a deep well, not forced, not loud. You don't ask to read it. That's not how this works. When he's done, he folds the paper, places it in another ribbon-tied box, and offers you a smile that's more like a breath. You leave without speaking, your chest lighter, your hand still empty, but somehow you carry more than you arrived with. Back in the village, the sun is finally breaking through the clouds, turning puddles to silver and washing the mud with gold. You help the weaver's apprentice gather cloths left too close to the flood, damp, but salvageable. You carry baskets of grain from the mill to the baker's, your fingers dusted in flour by the end of it. The warmth returns slowly, like a tune remembered halfway through a whistle. By evening, the square glows with soft light, candles in windows, lanterns hung from beams. Not a festival, not a celebration, just a shared decision to be seen. You sit by the fire with your family, your hands curled around a wooden cup of warm cider that smells like cloves and patience. Someone is playing a tune on a 3-string lyre, slightly out of key but steady, and the sound fits perfectly into the moment. A child curls against your side, thumb in mouth, dreaming of something you'll never ask about. Your aunt hums a melody with no lyrics. Your uncle stares into the fire like he's watching the story of the day play out in embers. You close your eyes for a moment, and all the words that didn't make it into the letter begin to settle. Not erased, not forgotten, just folded into the edges of this night. Later, when the fire dims and your place on the bed calls like an old friend, you lay down with a quiet kind of fullness. The kind that doesn't come from answers but from having spoken the truth. Even if only once, even if only to paper. You curl your hand under your chin, feeling the fox in your pouch press lightly against your hip, and the stone next to it, now definitely warm. You breathe in the smell of fire and linen and old wood. And in the stillness just before sleep takes you, you hear a voice. Not out loud, not startling, just familiar. Your own voice from earlier, echoing back in a whisper. What needs to be said has been said. And sometimes, that's all the healing you need. The next morning is made of gold, not metaphorical gold, but real, honest sunlight. That kind of golden beam that spills through the cracks in the shutters and crawls across the floorboards like a curious cat. It warms your ankles as you shift beneath the blanket, eyes still half closed, your cheek pressed into the rough fabric of your pillow. For a moment, you don't move. You just let the warmth seep into you, inch by inch, as if your bones have waited all night for this. You hear the fire crackle to life, someone's gentle footsteps near the hearth, and the distant clink of a pot being placed over the coals. It's early, but not lonely. The kind of morning that feels like it's waited specifically for you. You rise slowly, your muscles remembering work, but forgiving you for now. The room smells of ash, bread, and something softly sweet. Maybe roasted apples, or maybe just the scent of comfort. You help stir the porridge, your hand moving the wooden spoon in a steady circle while someone hums beside you, off-key and lovely. You eat in silence, sharing spoonfuls with a sleepy child who insists on climbing into your lap like a sleepy cat, still wrapped in yesterday's dreams. No one rushes. No one lists chores. There's time, for once, and the village seems to agree. You step outside and the air kisses your face, not with cold, not with wind, just a perfect softness, the kind that only comes after a long line of hard days. The streets are dry. The puddles are gone. The mud has begun to harden into paths again, as if the storm never happened. But you remember it. You remember the buckets, the ropes, the cold. You remember the candle in the field and the fire in the storyteller's eyes. You remember the fox in your pouch, the stone you never named, and the letter you never read. You spend the morning helping without needing to be asked, gathering herbs, turning the soil, hauling dry wood from the edge of the trees. Your hands move with purpose, not urgency. You speak little, but every nod, every glance carries meaning. A neighbor hands you a plum with a soft smile. A child braids your hair with clumsy fingers and forgets to apologize when they pull too hard. The cobbler's dog decides you are trustworthy enough to sit beside. These are small things, but they matter more than anyone says aloud. In the afternoon, you return to the field, the one where the scarecrow leans and the circle of stones still holds space. The grass has begun to green again, just barely, tiny blades poking through the muck with stubborn joy. You sit on the same flat stone as before, the same one that remembered your weight and offered it back to you without complaint. You take the bird carving from your pouch, rough, unfinished, the wings uneven, and press it gently into the soft earth at the base of the largest stone. Not a grave, not an altar, just a place, a marker of having been. You don't say anything. You just breathe, once, twice. The sky above is a blue you haven't seen in weeks. Almost too perfect. Almost suspicious, but you don't question it. You let it be. As you walk back toward home, your steps are slow. Not heavy, just aware. The village glows in the late light. Rooftops catching fire in the sun's low descent. Shadows stretching like cats in windowsills. Someone is playing a lyre again, this time in tune. A girl is reciting a story about a dragon who only ate root vegetables. Laughter ripples across the square. Someone offers you a piece of cake, slightly burnt but given freely. You take it with both hands and say thank you in a voice that sounds like it belongs to someone who remembers how to be part of something. The evening settles gently. You help hang herbs to dry above the fire, the scent of sage and thyme blooming in the warmth. You patch a hole in the curtain. You fold a blanket. You sit by the fire and listen to the quiet talk of a house still full of stories, some already told, some waiting in the corners. No one hurries. No one leaves. It's a night made for staying. When the candles have burned down and only the embers remain, you crawl into bed, the same space, the same shape carved by your body night after night. You lie still, hands on your chest, the carved fox and the stone now resting beside your head like silent sentinels. You close your eyes. You don't need to be told the story's ending. You already know it. It ends here in this moment, not with answers, not with revelations, but with rest, with breath, with warmth, the long sleep, the kind that doesn't ask questions, the kind that doesn't need to be earned. And before the last thought slips from your mind, you feel the weight of the day settle like a blanket pulled just right. The quiet knowledge that tomorrow, like today, will begin again. Different, but still yours. If you've made it here, you beautiful time-traveling soul, thank you. Really, thank you for walking through this quiet village with me. If this story held you, even for a moment, I'd love for you to be part of this little corner of the world we're building. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Not because it's expected, but because it's always better to fall asleep with familiar voices nearby. Leave a comment down below. Tell us where you're listening from, what part of this night you carried with you, and if you've ever had a moment in life that felt a little like this, soft, slow, imperfect, but enough. Share your stories with the community. This isn't just about one voice. It's about all of us dreaming together. And hey, if you liked this journey, let me know what you want to dream through next. There are 1,000 more quiet corners of history waiting. Until then, sleep well, Wanderer. You're home now.